Welcome back. So, it's not quite Monday, it is now Tuesday, but it is the big eviction day. Now, when I'm talking about eviction, I'm talking about these. These and my peas have all got to go out now. I don't like them getting too big in their module trays. I'd rather get them into the ground. And as you can see from the bottom, they are definitely ready to go. Now, at this time of year, I will cover them with a little bit of fleece. Even though these are frost tolerant, it's in case we get a little bit of cold wind, and it just gives them a little bit of protection at this time of year as they're getting established. Plus, in general, it keeps the foxes off, but not always. So today, I am going to get my broad beans in and my peas. And I'm also going to be sowing a few seeds direct into my beds. And this is where the broad beans are going to be going this year. Same bed as last year, but it's had a really good mulch of new compost later in the year. I did weed it, but there is a few little bits and pieces coming through which do need to be pulled. No dig isn't no weed. It just means there's a little bit less, but unless you keep on top of your weeds, it's going to get really bad. That's where a hoe or a little trowel comes in really useful, just so you can keep on top of the weeds. Now, I find these beds so much easier to weed and manage than digging straight into the ground. Now, I've had experience of both sides of the story, both dig and no dig. And I'm not going to lie, this is so much easier. So this is where it's going to go. So I'm going to go and grab the rest of my broad beans. Now I've got my broad beans and I've got my dibber. What I'm also going to do, because normally I have actually sown, in general, most years, about 40 or more plants. I actually haven't got that many. And I did sow some more the other week, but they're only just starting to sprout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant some directly into the soil to see, fingers crossed, if I can get any of these to germinate outdoors. Now, they will germinate outdoors. My biggest issue is mice and other pests that destroy the bean. So Agadulce, I've got some left, which I really do want to use the rest of these this year because, to be honest, my germination rates for this wasn't that fantastic. But I'm going to start from the back and then move my way forward. But first off, I want to be able to get in the plants that I've already got that's grown enough to go in. Now, like I said before, some of these are a little bit big for what I actually want in the ground. I want to be able to fleece them without them getting too damaged. So these will go in a little bit deeper than what maybe is needed. Now, these are Agadulce as well, if that's how you pronounce it. So I will plant these in and then sow some seeds not far from it. Now, I do plant mine quite close together simply because they can support themselves as they are growing. Now with these, you can see that the roots, these are definitely ready to go out. And I think these won't have a problem taking into the soil. Now we have got a load of crows that have moved in not far from us in the big tree. There's a lot more this year than what there normally is. So, and they have been known to dig up newly planted plugs and plants and things. So having the fleece over them, hopefully these will get less damage. Now, I am not one for strings and measurements. Things will go in as I can do it. I'm not very good at spacing out precisely and neatly It's just not my style. Now this soil is quite moist at the moment. And we're due, yet again, more rain this afternoon. So I'm actually not going to water these in. So I'm just going to get on and get this broad bean bed done, and I'll show you what it looks like after. And this is all now planted. Now I have planted a few seeds here of broad beans, and I've got a little bit more space. Now I have got another tray to come out, but like I said, hasn't quite sprouted enough at the moment. And then that will fill this bed. Now once these come out, there'll be something else in its place. Now I haven't quite decided what my second crop will be here. But broad beans are done and dusted by June, July. So I've got plenty of time to put something else in this spot after I've harvested and taken the beans away. Especially if I can actually get something sowing in modules to replace these once they're all done and dusted. So let's move on to the pea bed. Now this is the pea bed, and we use the chicken wire for the main amount of peas to actually climb up. And then we'll also add a few sticks and a bit of string as we go, just to support the ones that are a little bit further back. Now I have weeded this, but at this time of year, weeds are very, very persistent. And when it comes to couch grass, you really do need to get your little hand trowel out and take as much of the root as possible. Now again, with my peas, I am going to be putting them quite close together because they really do like to scramble amongst themselves. It also helps with support. So with these peas, it's the Douce Provence pea, which is quite a nice pea. And I think I've got a bunch of early peas to come out as well at some point over the next week. Now I am thinking of actually direct sowing some peas to see how we actually do this year by doing that method. If I can direct sow a lot of the veg that is early on, it will be even better for the amount of compost that we actually have to use doing it in modules. But again, the reason we do in modules is to mitigate all that pest damage, lost seed to mice, and to start off with a much stronger plant in place, so there's less risk of any damage and losing crops. Now, to be honest, these holes are much bigger than what I actually need. So I'm just going to pop them in and backfill the hole a little bit. I'd actually forgotten that I'd actually used these this year. Now, I always plant close together because there is such a risk as well of losing an awful lot of your transplants. Again, pigeons, other birds, rats, mice, they all love a little bit of fresh, tender pea or whatever it is that you're trying to grow. And again, I'll come back to you after I've finished planting these up. Excuse the hat hair, it was much colder this morning when I came down, so I popped a hat on. Now I've got some serious hat hair. Okay, so those are those peas, the first lot of sowings that are actually in the ground now. But what I am going to do, even though I've sown some of these in modules, I'm actually going to multi-sow these on the other side of this netting, on the other side of the bed. I want to give direct sowing of certain things a bit more of a trial this year. I stopped several years ago because of the amount of peas and runner beans and things like that I lost. But I'm going to give them a go now. Now this really is going to be the least amount of fuss as I can possibly achieve. I'm just going to put some holes into the ground, 2 or 3 peas in each hole, and just see how we get on. Now I'm hoping that if I sow several peas in each one, that at least if I lose a couple, I will still have something come through. But peas are one of those things that actually don't mind being multi-sown. Now, it isn't just broad beans and peas that I need to get into the ground. It is also carrots. Now, I want to sow my early Nantes. I think my giant red carrots I might put somewhere else. So I'm going to pop those in for now. But I need to get this done before it absolutely starts peeing it down here. And I'm going to sow them in between my garlic. Now, I've normally got a really narrow little bit of a tool to actually help me sow my carrots. Now, I'm not going to sow all of them because I want to space out my carrots this year a little bit. And I've got a broken pot there too. But I'm going to do a couple of lines. Now I'm doing it in between my garlic. Just try and see if I can put off some of the carrot root fly with this oniony smell. Now, I do have a fine net over these because of the allium leaf miner. So that's another reason why I want to be as quick as possible. Now, last year we actually decided, probably should have stuck to my original plan, but we decided to grow in some old bathtubs that were left here on the plot. We used the topsoil that was already here. We planted directly into that topsoil with a little bit of extra sand, and we had extremely poor carrot harvest. In fact, I have never had such a poor carrot harvest. Now, we've only had this plot a couple of years, and the year before we actually done it directly into the soil. And that's exactly what I'm going to do this time, because those results were fantastic. We actually had really, really good carrots the first year we did our no-dig beds. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I don't know whether you've ever seen carrot seed, and it is really, really quite small. Not as small as some of the other seeds. I want to try and sow these as thinly as possible so I don't have to keep pricking out, messing around with the carrots, encouraging that carrot root fly. Now, I am going to try my hardest, but it is very, very breezy here today. So the chances of me getting this perfect is 0. Not that I'm trying to go for perfection anyway. And then all I'm going to do, instead of backfilling it, I'm just going to scatter some fresh compost over the top of those seeds. 1, so I can actually tell where the carrots are, because labels have a habit of blowing away. And 2, this compost is still a little bit chunky, so I would rather sow anything that's got a fine seed in a bit more of a sieved compost. So that's my first lot of produce that I've actually got into the ground for this year. My peas and broad beans. Now, over the next 3-4 weeks, there'll be more and more filling these beds. Now, I've said before about planning and making a plan and deciding on what you're going to grow when it comes out, when you harvest it, what you're going to put into that bed after. I'm still tweaking mine because we're still trying to decide what we want to grow. I want to grow a bit more variety of different things this year than what we have done in previous years. But at least that's another job I don't have to worry about. Plus, it's given me a bit of space in my greenhouse. So if you're like me and your greenhouse is starting to get a little bit overwhelming and a little bit full, if there's anything that can tolerate that little bit of cold, especially with a bit of fleece over the top, get it in the ground. The longer you leave it in the modules, the weaker that plant can actually become. But there's a balancing act with getting them in at a decent size, so they're relatively pest-free, and getting them in too big where they can actually get damaged from the elements that we suffer from here in the UK. But I thought, while I'm down here, I need to pick some purple sprouting broccoli and some kalettes, because I keep forgetting to harvest them, and because of the rain I haven't been down in about 2-3 days, either because of work or because of weather conditions. So let's have a quick look at that purple sprouting broccoli that we planted early last year. Now, this variety that we sowed last year, which I can't remember, but I actually think it was a seed packet from Wilco. Now, we all loved Wilco, and it certainly was handy to get hold of certain seeds, but you don't always get the best seeds from Wilco. These ones have done okay, but compared to the Rudolph that we did previous years, it doesn't have a patch on that Rudolph. But we are getting lovely purple sprouting broccoli. Now, I have left this a little bit long, so this one has actually started to go to flower. It is still edible, but it's not at its best. Now, this is my fault. I haven't been keeping an eye on it like I have done in previous years, and it doesn't take much for it to go over and lose that fantastic head. But I'm going to take it just so we get more purple sprouting broccoli. Now, once you've taken the head, you will get lots of little sprouting bits coming off of it. Now, I'm going to take a lot of these because even the smaller ones are wanting to go to flower. So I'm just going to take the whole of that. Now, I also need to come in and take off a load of these leaves and things. Now, guys, I don't know whether you're like me. When it comes to any crops that are under any netting, I really do fail to look after them as much as my other crops that are open to air. I think the hassle of dealing with netting and things like that really does seem to put me off. I think majority of it is with me is because we use bricks and things to hold the netting down because, well, it's what we had here. There was an awful lot of bricks that was left here on the site. So that's what we use. They're also a massive trip hazard and it drives me nuts. They're always getting caught in my hook and eyes on my boots. Anyway, rant over. So this one actually started producing its broccoli florets. I think it was early December. And now it's just wanting to flower continuously. Now, I'm not too fussed about this one. I'm not going to get too excited. But I also know that if I'd had my chickens at the moment, they would have loved this. Now, the flowers are edible. Quite polleny. But this year's crop is definitely not as good as previous years. But don't get me wrong, you'd still be paying an awful lot for this type of purple sprouting broccoli or sometimes under tender stem in the supermarket if you were to buy it. But I'm definitely going back to that Rudolph. How is your gardens, your allotments, your growing spaces, how are they doing so far? Have you managed to get anything into the ground so far, or are you waiting for that a little bit longer? Are you still harvesting anything? I'm actually grateful because this really is the hungry gap when it comes to here in the UK in general. But there is lots of things that you can do to keep yourself sustained in some healthy greens, fruits and vegetables, especially at this time of year. Now the purple sprouting and these kalettes have probably got, well, I'm hoping to get at least another month's worth of greens from these plants. I think if I'd actually harvested them on time and not let them get to the state that they've actually got in, I would have got a longer harvest. But I've still got high hopes. Everything else we've actually removed or actually harvested everything. All my kale was removed and actually chopped up and put into the freezer. So we have still got lots of kale, and it won't be long before I'm sowing more kale to put out to have loads of fresh kale for this year. But let me know in the comments, guys, about what you are or what have you been doing this week on your growing space. But I also want to say thank you for all the support that you guys have given me and those that just keep coming back to the channel. I really am appreciative. If you're new here and you have enjoyed any part of this content, please like and subscribe. It really does help my channel grow. I'm always going to be on my allotment, and to be able to take you guys on a journey to see how I grow things, which is not necessarily always the right way, is a real privilege for me to be able to do. So thank you so much for your donations, your support and everything that you guys do for me. So that is it for today. I have got a lot to do today and it's about to start raining, and I want to try and get several films filmed today because I've got some interesting things I would like to try this week.